Good afternoon and welcome to the Demolition Daily LiveStream. I'm your host, Mark Anthony. You almost caught me on the hop there. Just come off a webinar looking at hydro demolition equipment. Yeah, as I say, nearly caught me on the hop. I was unaware of the time. Do you ever get the feeling that you've been a bit too hasty? Well, that's pretty much how I'm feeling right now, actually. I've been closely monitoring the views and the engagement on this stream from the very first episode way back 9-10 weeks ago. About a week ago, it appeared that interest was starting to dwindle, I guess. At least it was in the live edition, which, as you know, if you're watching this, goes out at 3 o'clock every afternoon. So rather than sit here and possibly talk to myself, I announced last week that we were going to step back from the daily broadcast at the end of this week. And wouldn't you know it, the last two episodes have actually seen an interest, a spike rather, in interest and engagement. So you go figure. It's still our plans to ease back on the frequency of these shows to allow me to get back to what I laughingly call my day job. But I'll be doing so with a little bit more regret now that interest has peaked again. Anywho, with the end now in sight, I thought it might be an ideal time to look back at what I've learned personally and professionally during the lockdown, what I've learned about myself, about the industry, about the people in the industry, and about how products and services are marketed within the industry as well. So what have I learned about myself? Well, I've learned, much to my surprise, that I'm a far more social animal than I previously imagined. I've genuinely missed human interaction throughout the lockdown. I no longer filter phone calls, for example. In fact, when my phone rings now, there's actually a genuine and palpable excitement at the prospect of speaking to a fellow human being. I guess I've learned that even though Zoom meetings are hateful and soulless, I've learned to enjoy and embrace those too. Although I must admit I do prefer Microsoft Teams. It just looks nicer and seems to work a little bit better. But even when and if we finally return to some semblance of normality, I think these remote meetings will remain an integral part of my working day, and I sense it will be a part of the working day of many others as well. I've also learned that I still enjoy learning. Let me think, 55 years old. Jesus, how did that happen? I still enjoy learning. I've taken part in webinars and online meetings and courses on a multitude of topics, from social media marketing to, as I mentioned earlier, hydro demolition methods. And I've taken something away from each of them. And something that will be, unquestionably useful for me at some point in the future. I've also learned that social media really can be social after all, although, like yours, I guess, my various social media feeds at the moment are full of political rants and anti-media vitriol and misinformation. Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn have helped me remain in touch with the people that matter most and the people that count. I guess I've learned to adapt and to overcome and to improvise and to innovate, this live stream being a prime example of that. And perhaps the greatest lesson I'll take away from this is one that I probably already knew, and we just needed a gentle reminder in the shape of a global pandemic. The most important people in your life, or at least in mine, are family. So whether it's spending more time with the good Mrs. Anthony and the 3 children that still live under my roof, FaceTiming my daughter that doesn't so I can speak to my grandchildren, or making Skype calls to my parents who are unfortunately a little bit further away. Having those people around me has made this prolonged period of isolation not just bearable, but actually enjoyable. I realise that as we all drift back into our old ways in the coming weeks and months, some of that will change. But even though it means I will get to see my grandchildren face to face at long last, I think I'll drift back with a fair degree of reluctance and possibly some regret, because the isolation hasn't been all bad. So what have I learned about the demolition industry and the people within it? That is precisely the kind of loaded question I would use to disarm an interviewee when I'm wearing my journalist hat. I guess my biggest takeaway is that demolition, as in life, there are 2 types of people. There are givers and there are takers. There are those that have viewed this pandemic, I think, as an opportunity to exploit, a chance to empower or enrich themselves, often at the expense of others. Disappointingly, there are those that have been missing in action. that have failed to show leadership just when the sector needed it most, that have basically been conspicuous by their absence at a time of crisis. But there are also those whose humanity has shone through, who have stopped to help others, who have come together for the greater good, and that have put the needs of the many ahead of the needs of the few. As a journalist, I guess, my job is to monitor the entire industry. I have no choice but to include everyone if we're to be a truly representative news organisation. But in terms of advice and promotion and support, I think I'll be far more selective in the future. Those that have taken care of their staff through the lockdown and the furlough process, those that have rallied behind the industry, the health service, and the nation as a whole, those that have taken the time to ensure that others, myself included, are okay, they are the people I will support in the future. Those are the people I want to work with. I want to work with people that want to work with me. Not just for personal reasons, and it's certainly not motivated by spite or by greed. In this industry, it's impossible to work independently. We rely upon equipment manufacturers and dealers, upon service providers and subcontractors, our own staff and agency personnel. My mantra when all this is eventually over is I don't want to work for or work with anyone. I want to collaborate with them. I firmly believe that collaboration in all its forms will be the phoenix that rises from the ashes of the coronavirus. And it needs to be. We are all facing some pretty tough times ahead. But I would rather face those tough times with people that I know, that I like, and that I trust than do it alone. Or worse still, do it with people that are in it for themselves and that cannot be trusted. Sadly, I think the glare of the COVID-19 lockdown has shown to the world the shortcomings in the sales and marketing efforts of many of the equipment manufacturers and suppliers. At a time when they potentially had a captive audience with which to interact and engage, many have just squandered that opportunity with ill-timed sales pitches that are the last thing that anyone needs right now. There are, of course, those companies that have seen the writing on the wall, that have rolled with the flurry of coronavirus punches, and that will come out the other end with their reputations, I think, burnished to a very, very high sheen. Companies like JCB, with its initiative to feed people living close to its factories here in the UK and in India, and its largely understated switch to online equipment sales. Companies like Caterpillar, which has hosted a series of really insightful webinars in which the call to buy was buried deep beneath the ability to learn. Companies like Ritchie Brothers, which has fully embraced online auctions and which has promised to help companies realise the value of their equipment assets quickly and seamlessly. Now contrast that with the companies that have continued to pump out messages of roll up, get your diggers here. Or those companies that have allowed their scheduled social media posts to flood the interwebs as if nothing has happened and as if the world is a normal place right now. Now, I normally get paid for this stuff, but in the interest of collaboration and giving it something back, let me just give those companies a few pointers, free of charge. Customers here in the demolition industry are sophisticated and they're knowledgeable. Bombarding them with emails and social media messages to buy this or buy that doesn't work. I'm not sure it ever did. Your job as an equipment maker or a product or service supplier is merely to inform, and in some instances, to entertain. The term social media contains the word social. You wouldn't walk into a pub, say hello to someone, and they'll try to sell them an excavator. So why in God's name are you trying to do it on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, or Twitter? Use these platforms to educate and to inform, to tell the stories of how your product or your service has helped others. Oh, and one final thing, and this is a personal bugbear of mine. If you're an equipment manufacturer, a product or service supplier, or worse still, a PR company that's going to send photos or video to a magazine, or if you're planning to post them online, please shoot them with a camera, not with a potato. Chances are the smartphone in your pocket is capable of shooting high resolution and even 4K footage and photos. So why in the blue hell am I still getting photos on a daily basis that appear to have been captured on a box brownie? Now, quite where all this leaves us, I've genuinely no idea. As you probably gathered by now, I make a lot of this stuff as I go along. one thing I can tell you is I believe I'm a different person today than when I first pressed the broadcast button some 9 weeks ago. I'd like to think I'm a better person. I'm more engaged with the industry that I write about. I feel a lot closer to the people that I work in and around the sector. I'll readily admit that I don't go in for the applauding the NHS each and every Thursday, although I would happily buy the coffee for a nurse in Starbucks, assuming they ever reopen. But I do believe I'm more compassionate now. I'll go out of my way to help people where I can, particularly those in the demolition industry that have been sideswiped by this COVID-19 crisis. I've realised that I need less stuff than I previously thought. I don't need to pop to the shops every day, and it is possible, as it turns out, to live without junk food and takeaways. But above everything, I think I've realised that I have no time for division or disunity. I don't care if you think the government has excelled or failed miserably during this global pandemic. I don't care whether you voted for or against Brexit. I don't care if you think Dominic Cummings is a model father and husband, or an aloof pillock who thinks the rules of the land don't apply to him. I don't care if you're black or white, male or female, gay or straight. If you're a decent person with the usual allocation of humanity, then I will bend over backwards to help you and those around you. I see it as my duty, and maybe even a calling now, to help the parts of this industry that want to help the sector as a whole. If you're driven by money, by greed, by ego, or by the need to criticise and undermine, then please feel free. Go use another platform, because over here we'll be far too busy building up the industry to even notice that you're gone. Now, all while I was waffling on with that, I've had some comments come in here. Let's have a look. I won't show that one. Thanks, Peter. I'm not going to show off the fact that you think I've done a great job. That's being a bit too egotistical even for me. Collaborative to work, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I just so that the audience knows, Peter and I and Nick Drew over at the Diggerman blog are working feverishly behind the scenes on a few bits of collaboration, all of which will become clear in the fullness of time. But these are people that would normally have been seen, in the traditional way of things, as effectively rivals. Earth Movers magazine, which is where both of those guys tend to earn at least part of their living, would be seen as a rival to our Dickers and Dozers title. But what is the point of trying to outdo each other and try and undermine each other? There's plenty out there. There's plenty to write about. There's plenty to cover. There's plenty to say. And, the more people that get to learn from my live streams, from Nick Drew's articles, from Peter Haddock's excellent podcast, the more people that get to see that, the better. I honestly don't believe that the information and learning belongs in silos any longer. Another comment here from Peter. Trust is front and center of my mind. Well, I can only echo that. One of the things that I've really come away from this with is that very thing, is trust. I do just want to work with people that we can trust, that are not in it for themselves. And I can't remember the exact expression, but this idea of, a high tide raises all the boats. That's what I want. I want everyone at a better level. I want people better educated. I want people in the industry safer. I want everyone earning more money. And to do that, we don't do that independently. We do that together. And if we're going to work together, we need to trust each other, which is why I work with Peter, which is why I work with Nick and a variety of other people besides. Another one here from Scott. Let's have a look. Use social media platform to stay in contact. Yeah, absolutely. As I say, it has been a tough time because my parents are a little bit further away. They're only sort of half an hour down the road, but the fact that I can leap onto FaceTime or to Skype and keep in touch with them has been a real godsend. Just reading Scott's points here. Yeah, it's interesting. What you're using there is technology and that kind of thing. I can't see this going away. I think everybody has now got so used to the idea of, I could make a phone call, but it's just as easy to hit the Zoom button and actually see the person that I'm speaking to. I don't think that's going to go away. And I think there's a lot more besides. I've mentioned this in the past. My parents, who are, well into their 70s now, have now had 9 or 10 weeks exposure to online shopping. Are they going to go back to shopping at their local Sainsbury's? The chances are they're probably not. From my point of view, yes, I'm still going to have to go to site to photograph and to film and to interview, but a lot of the stuff that I do just as easily remotely, which I think we've proved. And I think with meetings, one of my concerns for, I guess, mid-range or mid-sized demolition companies is that possibility of losing the human touch. When you look at some companies that are on their way up, you get the managing director is able to visit each demolition site that they're active on a daily basis. When they get a little bit bigger, that daily becomes weekly. And then when they get a bit bigger still, it becomes harder and harder. And you get to the point where there are sites that the managing director or the senior personnel literally never get to see. I'm not saying that's a shortcoming, because I think when you get to that sort of size and stature, chances are you've built a structure and an infrastructure around yourself to make sure that you can control those sites. But with the advent of things like Microsoft Teams and Zoom meetings and the various other technologies that we've all been exposed to over the past 2-3 months, depending where you are, I think that's going to be an integral part. I think evening meetings, over Zoom at the end of a working day are going to become not just the fashionable thing to do because we can't do anything else. I just think they're going to be part and parcel of the industry. Not much more I can really add to that. I think I've pinned my colours to the mast, I guess. Ultimately, I've realised that I have a choice. I can try to please all the people all the time, or I can try to work with people that I like, that I trust, and that I think are doing things for the better, not just for themselves, but for the industry itself. And I don't actually believe there is any harm in doing things to better yourself or to better your company. If you're sat atop a multi-million-pound demolition company, you've got there through hard graft and dedication and various other bits and pieces that go with it. But the ones that I want to focus on are the ones that have done that with people. That when you look at the recent months, where you've had the likes of SafeDem and McGee putting their companies in the hands of their employees, that I think is going to be more and more common in this industry. And that working with, rather than treating their staff as an expendable resource, those are the companies that I want to work with. Those companies that are supplying products and services, not just to turn a buck, but to make the industry better, more productive, and more importantly than ever, I think, safer. Those are the companies I want to work with. Those companies that are harnessing technology and making things better for the industry as a whole. I don't care. The people that are making GPS systems and control systems and all that kind of thing, if they're making a lot of money, that's fine. That, in fact, I would absolutely encourage that, because the more people that are using that sort of modern technology, the safer, the better, and the more efficient the industry is going to become. I've waffled on for plenty long enough. The comments have dried up, it would appear, although there's still people in the live stream. So I'm going to sign off for the day. As ever, stay safe, stay positive, look after yourself, look after your family, your friends, and your colleagues, particularly your family. As I said earlier, you do realise just how important they are at times like this. I will be back here again at 3 o'clock tomorrow. And make sure you're here at 3 o'clock on Friday as well. It will be our last show. It will be a bumper show. I've got a funny feeling it could well run to an hour, possibly more. So if you're looking for something to ease you into the weekend, or possibly to send you away furious with what you've heard, make sure you're here on Friday at 3 o'clock. Until then, I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Have a great day, have a great evening, and I'll see you all again very, very soon.